Well, it's that time of year again. Here we are, when we remember the Last Supper with foot washing. Wait, what? Where are the bread and the wine in John's account? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty grateful our forebears in the faith didn't base our regular Sunday worship on this version. I feel like we dodged a real bullet there. Take, wipe just doesn't have the same ring to it. And let's be honest, there was definitely a point last week when my partner scolded me for letting my toenails get so long and sharp they were cutting through my socks. We had a conversation that went something like this: "Babe, you need to cut those things before you hurt someone on Maundy, Thursday. Does Grace have toenail insurance?" And if that's a little TMI, just remember y'all are about to wash each other's feet. This is an evening of awkward oversharing and uncomfortable boundary crossing that began with Jesus in an upper room with some very close friends and some very dirty feet. It's a little comical, but if we scratch the surface, there's some deep stuff going on here. Last year for my birthday, my partner took me to one of my favorite spots in the city for a sunset walk along Crissy Field. We weaved through estuaries and beaches, saltgrass, lupine, and sea lavender, so abundant it was like Mary's nard filling the whole house, perfuming the coast for a mile all around. Simply taking in the grace of that landscape, as we approached Torpedo Wharf, I stopped in my tracks at this image that I will never forget, partly because iPhone reminds me every time March 1st rolls around. The sun, so near to the horizon, was pouring forth its Aurelian light, revealing a mesmerizing and intricate pattern of shoe prints in the sand. And I found myself pausing to take it in, to honor it somehow. Maybe it was the golden hour, or maybe it was those words ringing in my ears, "Take off your sandals, Moses." Whatever the reason, it felt holy, charged with divine presence and significance, deserving of my attention. With the mighty Pacific churning in the bay to my right, and with the cliff face beginning to kind of emerge and rise ahead of us on our left, that part of Crissy Field has a quality of feeling just like you're at the edge of the world, like one of those old-timey explorers, and you're just looking out into raw, untamed nature. And these footprints were so precious in that moment, each one signifying a life, the imprinted memory of our ephemeral humanity on the seemingly eternal and harsh landscape. The presence of these prints evoked the absence of the people who formed them, which paradoxically also conjured their presence again in my mind. Most of us here tonight have something in common. An hour or two after we were born, a nurse came by with a certificate of live birth and an ink pad. Footprints are still taken today by many birthing centers because, like fingerprints, each footprint is unique. Yours is. Whorl, ridge, and line form a labyrinth of identity that is used to ensure that babies aren't mixed up. Footprints are more common than fingerprints because newborns are so wiggly and their tiny little hands are so fragile and often clenched in these tiny little fists that it's safer and much easier just to get a footprint. But that print serves another purpose too on the other side of the life cycle. We're witnessing it now in places like Bucha, where mass graves were identified partly because of shoes sticking out from the earth designed to conceal Russian war crimes. When bodies are so disfigured by violence that fingers and teeth cannot be used, footprints are also a reliable source of identification. Like the footprints I witnessed at Crissy Field, sites like the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., use shoes in public exhibitions to communicate this presence of absence. They literally stand in for the lives cut down by the brutality and inhumanity of war. Walking by that tangled mound of leather moved me to tears the very first time I saw it when I was in 8th grade. One of my favorite contemporary philosophers, Martha Nussbaum, would say that my reaction means it was working exactly as it was supposed to. She writes at the intersections of political philosophy, ethics, ecology, and literary criticism, and her work could not be more relevant to the changing zeitgeist of this age. Throughout her work, the twin themes of love and disgust surface as she ponders the problem of social evil and its possible answers. Nussbaum asserts that humans are particularly afflicted with a condition unlike any other animal in the world: anthropodenialism. Try saying that 3 times backwards. It's a fancy word that means we both deny our animality and at the same time deny or diminish the extent to which the wider animal world shares traits that we ourselves think set us apart. For her, this problem lies at the heart of many social evils, among them war, climate change, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, because it compromises our ability to have compassion on those we brand as less human or even animalistic. She writes, quote, "It's not enough to turn away from our own animality in revulsion. People seem to need a group of humans to bound themselves off against, who will come to symbolize the disgusting, the merely animal, stigmatized as dirty, smelly, slimy, animal-like. Disgust and primitive shame work in close cooperation. Stigmatized as disgusting, subordinate groups are also branded as shameful, defective, unworthy, sullied, not able to rise to the heights of which transcendent humanity is capable," end quote. The flip side of this, she notes, is the terrifying imagination that humans apply to enacting violence on one another. The technology of war may point to sophisticated achievements in math and science, a truly human thing, but it does so precisely to undermine and destroy actual human lives that have become the casualties of this anti-human rhetoric, this animalistic propaganda. So I wonder how Nussbaum would read this gospel tonight. She believes that public art which engages us in self-reflection on our own shared and embodied animality has the power to break down this ancient and peculiar sin of anthropodenialism. I think of foot washing as the ultimate performance art. We often speak of this incident where Jesus strips naked, and let's be clear, the picture on the cover of our leaflet is deceptive. He is supposed to be naked. Where he strips naked, ties a cloth around his waist, pours water into a basin, and gets on his knees to wash his disciples' feet as shocking. That is usually the language we use in church. And that is true. It was shocking. But the quality of that shock has another name. It was also disgusting. They were clearly revolted. Disgusted perhaps by the one whom this gospel calls logos, mind, order, rationale, occupying himself with the lowest part of the body, the part that literally grounds us to the earth, recalling our common origin with all creatures formed from the mud. Disgusted that he would willingly defile his social privilege as a man assuming the position and doing the work of a woman. Disgusted that Jesus would betray his class, taking on the form of a slave, not metaphorically like we hear in Philippians, but actually stooping down to perform the most humiliating and menial of tasks. Disgusted that he willingly violates his own dignity as he washes the feet of that most repulsive of disciples, Judas. Disgusted that he would touch their filthy, animalistic feet. The thing about love is that no one sees it coming. It is stealthy, and it is creative, and it surprises and delights. There is nothing particularly subtle or creative about evil, even if war drives innovations in technology that long outlast their military applications. There's nothing in evil that leads to spontaneous flourishing and growth as love does. Even as Jesus repairs the basin, a great empire mobilizes around him and his followers, coiling around Jerusalem with its legions and high-tech siege engines that only a few decades later will reduce the holy city to a pile of smoldering ruins. But here, in this small, undisclosed, unnamed little room, far from the lidless eyes of Rome's procurators, this small event, this insignificant thing, will shape the course of human history and have a more lasting impact than anything that empire will ever produce. It may be cliche, but love truly does find a way. In this time when war threatens to undermine all humanity, our humanity, let tonight fill us with courage and with hope as we move toward the cross and the empty tomb. Our towels and our basins may be pretty low tech, but there is no radar that can detect love coming. There is no anti-missile system that can shoot it down. The gospel requires no scramjets to speed across the globe with hypersonic power. While dictators behaving like dictators is neither new nor surprising, the Lord of all, bending his knee to wash our feet, these precious animal things, is tonight presence and absence, life and death, love and disgust greet us publicly and intimately as we too are being born again into the one identity that persists through it all.